On the flip side of that, Memphis has most certainly not sat on their hands and let these players leaving deter what they're doing in the transfer portal, because they have Ryan Silverfield and the staff have constantly been grabbing players out of the portal, and definitely can't knock that. The same day they lose Cameron Jackson, they go out and get a Darius Jones from Texas A&M. Not quite as big as Cameron Jackson, because you don't find many 6'6", 340 guys just walking around. But 6'4", 300 defensive tackle.
Helpful to add with Derek Hunter and all these guys that they're bringing in.
With an SEC pedigree. They go out and get Jalen Joyner.
Or Johnson. Jalen Johnson?
Joyner, I believe. Kenny, can you?
From Ohio State?
No.
Jalen Joyner. Okay.
Jalen was
I'm ahead of you.
FAU,
okay. Jalen Joyner.
Yeah, which was a good one. Had a productive career, wasn't as productive this year due to injury, but I think he could be a good one for him at defensive end. Adds another necessary size. I think he's like 6'2", 265.
Huge.
Yeah, big.
It's edge rusher, and you know what? And that's a good thing, because it lends itself to a 4-down front more consistently.
Absolutely, and
because they didn't have the horses this year to run that.
Didn't have the size, or the rotation.
And they still ran it. They still ran the 4-down front consistently, but they didn't have enough depth.
The juice wasn't there later in games, and I think that obviously has been realized, and they are very quickly attacking that, because they need the guys and need the bodies up front to do so.
And we talked about it. You said what, 6'4", 6? What'd you say his measurables were?
Jalen Joyner.
6'2",
265.
6'2", 265 as a 5 technique. They're outside of the tackle as a D end. Like, they're finally, and they have done this in the past, but we talked about identity. Remember that? I think it was like episode 4.
Yeah.
We talked about identity and seeing what you wanted in the recruiting trail and going and getting guys that fit a role. That's the type of guy that fits a role. He's a 5 tech. Derek Hunter's a 3 technique, right? A Darius Jones could be a nose or a 3 technique as well. Right. They're finding guys that finally fit that 4-man front that they want to run consistently.
Yeah, this defensive line is going to look nothing like it did last year.
Yeah.
Because really the only thing you had in terms of size on the defensive line last year, and I'm not talking about outside linebackers,
just Cam.
Rush ends, is Cam. As far as
and Cormonte to a certain extent.
Right. But as far as especially your 1 and 3 tech, let's focus on that. We know we've talked about
big hosses that can eat up 2 gaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, 3 technique not necessarily taking up 2 gaps, but guys that can eat up run blocks and
make
space
plays
in the run game.
Clog it up so linebackers can come in and clean it up. I mean, that's what 1 tech's primarily, their primary job is. But looking at what they're doing on the defensive line, I love it, because you're freeing up guys like Cormonte and Jalen Allen when you get a guy like Jalen Joyner, who, golly, we're going to have a lot of Jalen's on this defense next year.
We haven't even got to the other Jalen that got out of the transfer portal.
But they're building size up front, which is something that Memphis has lacked since fill in the blank. We talked about this a couple weeks ago.
Maybe that 3-man front they ran with Terry Redden and Martin Affetti in 2014, maybe?
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
That's a long time ago. Ricky Hunter.
Yeah, so they're getting size up there. They're getting bodies up there so they can rotate and stay fresh. We know how important that is in a college game today. With how quick these offenses go, you have to have, 7 to 8 up front.
You look at Georgia, they run in waves.
Right. 4-man waves.
4-man, and they just switch.
Right. You got to have
5 plays or whatever.
Got to have 7 to 8 guys. Got to have 7 to 8 guys that can play at their best, and so they're building up to that. It's a great start. And then as we've kind of touched on a little bit here with all the Jalen Johnson, former Ohio State safety. I love that get for them, because you got a guy that Matt Barnes obviously knows well from Ohio State, tore his ACL before his freshman year, so redshirted, and then
hadn't played.
What happens at Ohio State? If you sit a year, you're going to get recruited over.
And if you have an ACL injury, you better work like the Dickens to try to get back and win a job.
Right.
It's tough to win a job there. It's true.
And when you bring in, top 10 safeties, usually multiple top 10 safeties every year, it's easy to get recruited over.
Yeah.
And Jalen Johnson wasn't a top 10 safety. He was
3-star.
Higher ranked 3-star. So very good, solid player. And once again, this is not one of those guys that was coming out of high school in 2016 and has never played and is, finally transferring. No, this is a guy that's been in college for 2 years, missed a full year, redshirted with the ACL, and then this year was the only year he was active in college. So.
And it's a relationship thing, man.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the thing with Matt Barnes. Matt Barnes came over here, and he brought Cormonte Hamilton immediately. And he's a guy who's already made somewhat of a difference. You want to see more production going into next year, but he'll be more used to the system and more comfortable in his position by next year, and he'll probably have more production. Jalen Johnson is a guy that Matt Barnes recruited. He was his position coach. I like the relationship building in recruiting. And if you have a guy that you trust, that you know, they're likely to make more plays on Saturday for you. And I feel like that's what Matt Barnes has done. And he's taken 2 guys from Ohio State, right? So
absolutely.
He's familiar with these guys, and I like to see that part of it. Now we'll see. There's no promises with Jalen Johnson. I haven't really seen him play, and you don't know how that ACL recovered when it did recover. But certainly he's going to be a guy who's hungry and ready to play ball.
Yeah, he's going to be in the mix regardless, because as we've talked about, safety is going to be one of the biggest needs with Quindell Johnson leaving. Like they have to have a guy step up back there.
Yep.
Doesn't matter who it is. Doesn't matter if it's Jalen Johnson. Doesn't matter if it's a walk-on. It doesn't matter who it is. They have to have dudes step up at the safety spot. And so actively addressing that, bringing in a guy with a ton of talent and Jalen Johnson to come in and at bare minimum compete from day one is absolutely massive.
Yes, and just filling those voids as they come at you, and there's still more that they need to get done.
Yeah,
but this day and age of college football, they can get it done.
Mm-hmm. And I think that if they added no more transfers from here until next season, I think they've done a great job.
Yeah,
I think they're doing a great job addressing the offensive line, the defensive line.
And trying to find players in the secondary.
And then finding guys to fill cracks, which we've talked about ad nauseum. Safety and running back, defensive backs and running backs. Some guys that can mix in and fill in and at bare minimum beat competition and push guys around them.
What you have to try to do is just get more out of the transfer portal than you lose. And I think you're already starting at a disadvantage with the guys you lost.
Right.
But again, there's guys that step up, and we'll see by the time we roll around to next year what that looks like, who steps into Caden Prescore's position. If Derek Hunter can be a productive guy along the defensive line like sometimes Cam Jackson was, right? Javon Ivory, you're going to have to find another wide receiver. Who's that going to be? But I think given the circumstances, they've done all they could and done a pretty good job at addressing the transfer portal in itself.
Right.